What's up, everybody? Welcome back to Old Volks TV. Got a good one this week. I say that every week because every week it's a good one. This is a really good one though. We've been having so many problems with that stupid motor that I've been trying to get back in my bus, and the motor in the bus doesn't want to start. The bus is like being crazy. So I bought this little 1600 over here from a guy, and a guy that I don't know, just an ad on Marketplace. And then yesterday I found a guy, my neighbor, who actually bought this crazy motor off of Marketplace, and I started thinking about all these used motors that are floating around town, and people trying to make a little money on something they pulled out of a lake, and it got me to thinking, everybody doesn't really know how to buy a used motor. I don't even really know 100%, but I have some certain things that I check to make sure the motor is actually going to be worth the money, and I'm going to share those with you this week. We got 5 things that you need to check on your crusty barn find motor that you're trying to spend money on, to make sure that it's actually worth the money. So we're going to zoom in here, we're going to check it out. 5 things to look at on a crusty motor. Alright, first thing you got to check, or first thing you want to do to check, overall, you want to look at that motor and you want to make sure everything is there. Does anything kind of jump out at you? Does anything look weird? That might give you clues to the motor's past. Do you see anything on this motor that's weird that might give you a clue to the motor's past? This crazy, gnarly dune buggy sand rail. This is more common on a sand rail than it is on a dune buggy, and certainly more common on a sand rail than it is on a street car. You might see it on like a drag car or something, but not likely. You got to hack up the body pretty good to get this crazy thing in there. So right off the bat, I can tell you, this is probably a bigger motor. Those sand rail guys, they don't run a 1600 motor in their car. 2 liters and up, usually. Not every time. You get 1835, you get a 1776 every once in a while, but something like that. And knowing that this car came from El Paso, or this motor came from El Paso, but I think it actually originated in California, is what the story I heard. So taking it out to the dunes and tearing it up 2 wheels up in the air, that's how those guys do it. So this motor has probably been driven pretty hard, if it's been driven. It's got this crazy exhaust on it. We're going to get rid of that so I can see a little more of it. What is that? So other stuff that this thing's got, it's got Weber 44s on it. That's kind of a big deal. Those are kind of racing carbs, bigger than normal, kind of too big for the street, unless you got more stuff down here that can back it up. That's another clue that this is probably a huge motor that was given the business. The main thing that's kind of odd, this shroud. These things are garbage. They're not good for cooling your motor. You can't see it, but also they've got the oil cooler mounted to the back of this terrible shroud, so you're sucking in hot air and blowing it right down across. You got chrome tins, which is also not good for the motor. It is tapped for full flow, which is kind of nice because you got the oiling, but you're putting all that heat right back here, then you're kind of defeating the purpose. It's got this painted coil, which I don't like a painted coil because you never know what's underneath there. Then they put a Coors Light can around it so that it can't radiate the heat. It's just going to hold in the heat. That's going to nuke, your coil. It's got plug wires, but these plug wires seem a little small compared to the rest of the stuff that's on here. These are just 7mm Pertronics wires. This distributor is a 009 distributor, but it's actually a Pertronics version. It's got the electronic points in there, but it's not a Bosch distributor. It's actually a Pertronics flamethrower distributor. It's got a degree pulley, but all the degree marks have been sandblasted off for some reason. Who knows why they did that. No bottom tins, no breastplate tin, obviously because of this thing. No back tin. These huge air cleaners, that's also big for the off-road guys. This is not going to fit in a bug if you're trying to close the deck lid, so that's not good. So really the first thing, you just want to check for weird stuff. Just kind of go over the motor and look at it and make sure nothing's crazy like a oil cooler mounted to the back of a funky garbage fan shroud. Number one, weird stuff. Alright, the next thing we want to check is we want to make sure that nothing is actually missing. You know, you kind of get that as you go over the first time looking for weird things that jump out at you. You want to make sure that you're not missing any pieces that you're going to have to then go and buy, you know, later. You just spend all this money on a motor and you know, you got missing stuff, you got to try and find it. Never a good thing unless you're prepared for it and unless the motor, you know, the price of the motor is allowing you to get that. So, you know, again, right off the bat, I can see this thing's missing some tins. You know, that's not great that it's missing some tins. Really, it's missing the heater tubes here that are coming off the shroud, but he doesn't have any heater boxes down here, and these are not plugged off. So we've got a motor that's sucking in hot air and then blowing most of it onto the exhaust, and not much of that air is making it down here. You know, it's missing some heater stuff, or at the very least some plugs. The breather here is missing a hose. If you actually get this thing running and you're going down the highway, this is just going to be shooting oil on your belt. Your belt's going to slip, your fan's not going to cool. Now, what little cooling you had, you don't have cooling anymore. You know, you want to make sure that that's there. Dipstick, you know, that's a good one. Sometimes they're missing, and then if it's sat missing in a barn forever, you know, it's going to get water and crap down inside there. Got a dipstick on it. Does it have a flywheel? Does it have a clutch? Does it have a pressure plate? You're probably going to want to replace them anyways, but, you know, at least if you have them on there, you know that the car or the motor might have been pulled from a car rather than just the motor itself sitting somewhere. So you want to check and make sure that it's got them. They may not be good, but at least they'll be there. You know, you want to check if the carbs are missing any parts. You have a whole linkage attached. You know, these Webers are fairly complicated. They've got the hex bar linkage on there. There's a lot of little pieces, you know, little jets and screws, and sometimes that stuff goes missing. Like, I know I've had carbs that were complete, and I've had somebody's carbs come in to get cleaned, and I gotta take them apart, put them back together, and I noticed that their carbs are missing a part. I gotta pull it off of mine. You know, and you don't want to do that ever. Pull good parts off of a complete item, but sometimes you got to. And you would hate to buy a motor and think that you could run this thing, and then you find out, oh, the air bleed screws are missing. You gotta find them. So, number two, you know, check for missing stuff. Make sure everything is there. All the tins are there and intact, and the screws and everything, the case bolts. I've had motors come with no case bolts, so that's a big deal. You don't want any missing parts. The next thing you want to do is you want to make sure that the thing actually has oil in it, and you want to check and see if the oil is clean. You know, that's pretty clean oil. I was told by the guy that bought this, my neighbor, that he was told that this motor hadn't been run. It was built a couple years ago for a rail and it wasn't run. Now this exhaust tells me that at the very least the exhaust has been run, because it's all sooty. But that oil is like crystal clear, perfectly clean. So either something is wrong, somebody's hiding something or not telling us something, because, you know, if you burn up a motor and put fresh oil in it, now it looks like it's a fresh motor. It could be a burned piston or something, who knows. So you always want to check the oil, you want to smell it, make sure that there's no gassy smell in there. You know, if it's dark, it's okay, but as long as it's full, that means that there's no water in the case. Usually when you pull the dipstick out, you'll see oil, and sometimes you'll see water on there too. You don't want any water in there. This one's covered up, all the holes are covered up, so I wouldn't expect there to be any water in it. But oil condition can be a very good telltale sign of the condition of the motor. If it's too clean, you gotta be suspect, unless the motor was freshly rebuilt. If it's black and crispy and the stick comes out dry and there's no oil in it, then that whole bottom end is probably toast. You're gonna have to take it apart, clean everything up. That motor's probably not gonna be a runner, or not for very long at least. So, number three, oil condition, very important. Alright, next thing you want to check, you want to make sure that this thing is gonna turn over. And you want to make sure that it's not seized, that it's not stuck. If someone drop a nut or something down there, it's going to stick a valve, that thing's not going to roll. You also can tell the compression by doing the little rollover test here. Basically all you got to do is grab the flywheel and the pulley here. Sometimes that's a little hard to turn, so we can put a 19 millimeter wrench on there, and we kind of give it give it a turn and make sure. There. Oh, see, you got some compression there. Makes that sucking sound, and then it gets easier to turn. I want to see if we can get at least one complete revolution. There we go. There, see, it's making the sucking sound. It's good. It's got compression on both sides, at least on 2 cylinders. I mean, you can turn it over as many times as you need to until you hear all 4 go, but it feels really strong. It's you know, it might even be a little bit higher compression motor. That I don't know. You can't tell that until you pull the heads off, which I really don't plan on doing on this one. But you know, you can turn it over by hand in both directions, and it's not making any weird noises. It's not hung up. It's not locked. It doesn't feel like it's full of water and it's hydro-locked. You know, the heads aren't full of water, so that's a really good sign. You know, for a motor to to roll over by hand like that. 1600 that I got over here rolls over, I mean, like butter. Compression's nice and even. It's easier to turn than this. This is a pretty high performance motor, so I wouldn't expect it to have, you know, low compression. I haven't shown you the heads over here, but it's got super flow heads on it, which is like not street. You know, you can run them on the street. People do it all the time, but that is not a stock head by any means. That thing is like crazy for the race guys' heads, and they're super flow. Who knows? Super flow heads. Yeah. I don't know. We're going to pull them off later. Not today because I don't have the right tool, but we're going to pull them off and check the rockers and stuff. And you can do that too. You know, when you're doing your rollover test, you can pop one side off and check the rockers, pop both sides off. Just make sure that all the stuff's going, that you don't have like a super broken cam or something. So there you go. Check, make sure it rolls over. That's kind of important. That'd be number 4. Yeah, number 4. Look at, we're already at number 4. All right, the 5th thing you want to check and make sure, and this is very important too, is there any weird smells or any kind of leaks that don't belong? I mean, everything is going to leak a little bit of oil. They're kind of designed to leak oil a little bit, and that's okay. You know, seals dry out from sitting. It's going to leak a little bit from the bottom down here. See, we got one little drippy drop. The oil sump, you know, is probably going to be a little leaky from sitting. Little leaks, little drips are okay, but you want to look for evidence of, you know, like where the fuel pump is it wet and pouring down, or behind the shroud where the oil cooler sits, you know, is it super moist and oily down there? Is the exhaust covered in oil, you know, wet oil, or even old oil? You know, you can tell they've cleaned everything off on the top and looked really good, but if there's heater boxes or if the header's running underneath, sometimes you can check those pipes and you'll see that there's oil down there, but it's clean on top, and that means that they cleaned it to look nice, but they're not going to tell you, hey, this thing dumps oil out of the head or whatever. So very important to check that. And smells, you know, you want to smell around the distributor, you want to smell around the coil here, just kind of give it a whiff. See if you smell any kind of like burnt plastic or burnt electrical smell. You know, maybe they fried the points, if it's got electric points, and they smoked them and they can't get the motor to run. And then they're just telling you, oh yeah, no, it's good, I just don't have a battery. You know, it could be the thing, you're going to sit there chasing it, because you have no idea that you've melted the points in there, the module. You know, or even the regular points could be toast, or the wire, they could have grounded something out. Another thing that you want to check, single carb, you won't really have this as much, but on the Webers or the CADs, you know, or the Dells, if you have the dual carbs on there, something you want to check is look down inside the Venturis, kind of give them a sniff, first of all smell for old gas. Old gas means that those carbs got to come apart and be dipped and cleaned and run through an ultrasonic or something to get all the old sticky gross varnish out of there. Also, you want to smell, if it smells burnt, they might have burned a piston or a cylinder, or it's backfiring. If the timing's way off, the distributor took a crap on you, and you know, now it's backfiring out of the. I had one of my Webers one time that was all sooty and black inside there, and it's because it was backfiring out of that, you know, that cylinder, and the guy was just running it like that, and he's like, it sounds really cool, you know, bah, 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 bah. That's not cool, man. That's wrecking your motor. And you know, it did a lot of damage internally to that motor, and that was no good for me because I bought the motor thinking it was good, and a fast 2-liter motor is junk. These are okay, by the way. These actually seem very clean. They smell good. I don't even smell gas, you know, in there. So that's a good sign. That means that it wasn't left, you know, wasn't driven hard and put away wet, as they say, or full of gas or anything. No varnish smell. So, you know, that's good. You can sometimes smell in the exhaust tube. If you smell like the burnt oil smell, you know, the rings may be bad if you can't get it. If it's not a running motor that you can see run, you can smell the oil in the exhaust. You can kind of feel around inside. You know, a little bit like that's okay, but if it's wet, you know, wetness inside the tailpipe, that means it's got oil or gas leaking into the exhaust. That's a bad time. You're going to end up having to fix, you know, a lot of stuff. That's a handy little towel. So, you know, smells and leaks, that's, you know, important. Oil leaks, gas leaks, you know, check the fuel lines. You're going to want to replace them anyways, but just check and make sure that they're not crumbling in such a way that it's going to get sucked into your carburetor and you're going to have to rebuild the carb later. So, leaks, smells, very important. You know, step 5. All right, well, I hope that helped you out. You know, 5 plus 1 rad tips for buying used motors, swap meet motors, you know, neighbor's house motors, whatever, man. Wherever you find a motor, if you think you need to buy it and you want to try to make it run right away, if that's your budget, not to build a motor, but to just try to buy one that runs, those are the things you look for in a used motor. Now, you could get a rebuilt long block and you could put it together. You could be running just fine, just fine. You know, you can find those for $1,000 bucks, but sometimes you get lucky and you get, you know, a good running, crusty, you know, whatever motor out of a wrecked car or something. A couple $100 sometimes. You know, you can really come up on a good motor. It's good to have an extra motor if you got the means. I've got motors laying around all over, but you know, none of them run. The only one that runs is the crustiest one that's not even complete. So that's another story, you know. But sometimes you just get a good deal on a motor. It's not a bad idea to pick one up if you can and kind of tinker with it and play with it so you're not taking your car off the road to learn how to rebuild a carb or something. So there you go. Another exciting, informative video from your friends over at Old Volks TV. You know the whole deal. If you made it this far to the video, you know how they end. Check the links down below. Visit all the friends. Buy yourself a t-shirt. Back to school's coming. T-shirts are, you know, they're great. We're gonna have, I think we're working on having a sale. We're gonna do like 10% off, and we're gonna use the code. Let's just use the code Summer School. Why not? Summer's over. So Summer School on our little shop down below. 10%. How about that? A coupon for the gang. Get you a nice shirt. And subscribe to our magazines and all that other good, great stuff. And thanks for watching. We'll see you guys next week.